Good evening and welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix daily price change predictions video. My name is FPL Nacho and this is a series where we usually discuss FPL price changes. However, we have had a big announcement today that we are going into a double game week 22. Now, of course, we haven't finished game week 21 just yet. We still have a few fixtures in the midweek next week, but we have confirmed that there are going to be double game weeks in 22, which is very, very exciting for us FPL managers, and it means we have plenty to plan and importantly discuss in this particular video. So we're going to go through all things double game week 22 and some of the key players that you do need to target going into game week 22. But first of all, I just want to say, if you want to support the channel, make sure you like the video, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And as always, everything is taken from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So if you want to win those mini leagues or improve your overall rank, I highly suggest you heading over to fantasyfootballfix.com, upload your squad for free, get access to all the free tools available, all the information in the bio. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so I know double game weeks is what we're here for, but I just want to quickly touch on these potential FPL price changes going into this evening. As always guys, I really urge you guys not making any transfers until we reach the following game week deadline, which is going to be next Friday. So it's not even this Friday guys, we have a whole week to wait until the deadline, and we know we've got fixtures happening still in game week 21. We have FA Cup fixtures, we have Carabao Cup fixtures. So much is going to happen between now and then. Really do hold those transfers guys, there's so much to unpack over the next week. But that's not to say that managers still aren't making moves. Obviously all the detailed information is around me on the graphics here, you can see a bit more detail. But tonight, going into this evening, Jota predicted to rise in price tonight. Obviously with Salah and Mane off to the African Cup, that means that Jota is just guaranteed that game time in that Liverpool front line. So he is predicted to rise in price tonight to 8.3 million. And the only other player that's predicted to rise in price tonight is Wolves' Sarr. Obviously doing so well in regards to clean sheets this season. Really been the surprise package in between the sticks. And currently at 5.1 million, predicted to rise to 5.2 million tonight. He is the other notable potential FPL price change. Now in regards to price fallers, there really isn't many highly owned players at all. We have the Chelsea pair and Werner and Loftus-Cheek predicted a fall in price. Again, nobody's really sat on those two. And then we have the likes of Fornals, obviously, who was out in game week 21 with a slight injury. Not sure on the status of him. And Foster predicted to fall in price tonight to 4 million. Again, with the long-term injury that he's carrying. No surprises there whatsoever. But that's a quick wrap-up of the projected FPL price changes going into this evening. We all know that we are here for these double game weeks that you can see behind me. So let's completely unpack this guys and let's go into a bit of detail on these fixtures. Right guys, so you can see behind me here I have brought up the Fantasy Football Fix fixture analyzer, which is updated with all of the double game weeks going into 22. So let's quickly touch on the teams that definitely have a double game week in 22, and those are going to be Burnley, Watford, Brighton, Man United, Spurs, Leicester, Brentford, and then Chelsea. And in the fixture analyzer behind me, I have it ordered by basically the best fixtures starting from the top, going down in difficulty. So you can see that Burnley currently have the best double game week based on our predictions, with Leicester at home and Watford at home. We're going to touch on some particular players later on in the video, but Burnley leading the way in regards to the double game week based on their fixtures. And we have Watford second best with their fixtures away at both away at Newcastle and Burnley. So again, two away fixtures for Watford, but with their attacking assets like Josh King, like Dennis, it does seem like a really good opportunity for those managers that did hold their Watford forwards to definitely hold on to them longer term based on these two away fixtures. Again, Newcastle defensively still not pulling up trees under Eddie Howe, although they're picking up a few results here and there. Defensively aren't necessarily looking the part. And Burnley, who have been struggling over weeks gone by, we do know they are good for a clean sheet, but I still fancy the Watford pair up front, like King and Dennis, still have potential of returns over that period. Now, Brighton, the team who have been pretty much the form team of late, obviously picking up a great result in game week 21 and a good draw against Chelsea. And with their home fixture against Crystal Palace and Chelsea, I still think there's great value in some of that assets. Now, a lot of managers right now probably own Sanchez in goal. Well, this is a great opportunity to hold him into this fixture. Of course, at home to Chelsea, probably doesn't look like the best potential for a clean sheet. However, we know that when we get a goalkeeper with a double game week, it is just a brilliant opportunity because the ceiling's so high. There's definitely save points available for Sanchez. And it's not to say Brighton aren't good for a clean sheet. We know, even with their defensive issues, still a very good team from a defensive perspective. Now, Man United, again, with a double game week with away to Villa and Brentford. On the face of it, does look good on paper, but I would question the strength of these fixtures. Villa away under Gerrard, yes, they had a poor fixture against Brentford, losing 2-1. But with the problems that Man United are suffering right now, really aren't gelling as a team. I think a well-oiled Villa team could actually pose a real test for Man United at home. And Brentford away, we've seen them pick up a really good result, obviously in game week 21, 2-1 against Villa themselves. And that's going to be another tricky place to go for Man United if they aren't firing on all cylinders. So while people have De Gea, maybe Dalot and Shaw, who is suspended, I do know, and Ronaldo, that could be a treacherous 2 fixtures for them. So I wouldn't necessarily be urging managers to completely pile in on Man United assets based on these 2 double game weeks. Now, Spurs have arguably the toughest on paper double game week with Arsenal at home and Leicester away. Now, Spurs, really disappointing result in the Carabao Cup. It's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from that. But we all know that Kane and Son are the go-to assets in this Spurs team. And the fixture against Arsenal, probably the most anticipated North London derby for a while now. Both teams with good managers, and Arsenal obviously looking much, much better under Arteta. And Leicester, a team who have defensively looked really leaky over the past few game weeks. So I think if you own the likes of Son or Kane, there's still definitely potential for attack and returns over this double game week. Now, Leicester is probably the one that's the most attractive for managers based on a differential perspective. We know that Vardy's carrying an injury, Daka's gone off with an injury, and we know Ian Nacho has gone away for AFCON. So the likes of Maddison and Barnes do pose really good differential opportunities for us in this double game week. And with Burnley away and Spurs at home, I think that is a nice double game week for differential assets, as I mentioned. And we're going to touch on, in particular, some of these Leicester differentials later on in the video. Now, Brentford, again, probably not a team that managers are targeting. I really don't urge you guys bringing in any Brentford assets with Liverpool away and Man United at home. Really, really tricky fixtures. And then we have Chelsea, the final team to double, with Man City away and Brighton away. And again, guys, I know that Chelsea have a blank game week following game week 22. I believe they have 2 blank game weeks. I really wouldn't urge managers piling in on their assets going into this double game week. There really isn't necessarily any options available with the injuries to Chilwell, James, potentially even Azpilicueta, who went off in the Carabao Cup. And from an offensive perspective, I just don't think Lukaku is worth the value right now. So if you own Chelsea assets, it's probably worth holding, but going into it longer term, I don't really think it's worthwhile investing for this one particular double game week. Now, the big thing really that we all talk about in double game weeks is what to do with these single game weeks. Because as you can see on our fixture difficulty, we still have Newcastle against Watford at home as one of the best fixtures to target, alongside West Ham, who are at home to Leeds. So it poses a real question for those managers that are potentially looking for a free hit or doing transfers out of single game week players to doubles. I really think if you own, in particular, the likes of Bowen and Antonio, I would really not be I would not urge managers to sell either of those assets. And in particular, if you're looking to free hit your team, although the attraction of double game week players is going to be the real kind of attention grabbing assets, I still think there's plenty of value in the likes of Antonio and Bowen. It's just naturally, with a double game week, if you can get an asset that is guaranteed game time, that is going to rise, obviously, the FPL ceiling with 180 minutes available to play, as opposed to the restricted 90 of Bowen and Antonio. But I really do think that that is going to be a very interesting question for us in regards to their West Ham assets. Do we keep them? Do we sell them? And in particular for those free hit managers. So guys, that's a quick, brief overview of the double game weeks in 22. As you can see further down the fixture analyzer, we have the teams that have their single game weeks. Obviously, right at the bottom there, we have Southampton away at Wolves, who are proven to be a very tricky, tough cookie. And Arsenal, Palace, Man City with tricky fixtures as well, respectively. So what should we do with these double game weeks? So I'm going to be touching on players in a minute, but I really do urge managers, and I touched on it at the start of the video, please do not make early transfers around these double game weeks. Basically, we know that these game weeks are going ahead as we speak, but there's no guarantee that they're actually going to happen. We know COVID is still a miss in the Premier League. We know right now there's an outbreak at Man City. Fixtures are at risk. And I really don't think that necessarily, example, Burnley against Leicester and Watford could even go ahead with the COVID situation. So yes, plan as well as you can, but please hold those transfers till the last minute, because anything can happen between now and the game week 22 deadline. Obviously, after that deadline, then you just have to put your hands up, and what will be, what will be. But what we can control is our time up until that deadline. I really do urge you managers just to hold fire, let the double game week sink in a little bit, analyse the players available, and hopefully I can help with that. And then you can make an informed decision a week's time when we have a bit more information available. But as I mentioned, it is just worth mentioning that these double game weeks, while they are attractive, could easily fall foul to COVID later on in the double game week 22. So that's enough of me rambling on about the fixtures. You guys can see it here. You can pause the video and obviously check out how it affects your team. Let's dip into some attractive players that I want to talk about, and let's see if we can pick out some gems going into game week 22. Right guys, I've brought up the fix comparison matrix, and what I've done here is brought up 5 players, one from each team, who I believe is the standout option in each team for you to potentially target in double game week 22. Now, this is probably catered towards those managers that are really going isolated on game week 22. So maybe those managers that are free hitting, potentially, or those managers that are just looking to have a real impact in game week 22 and focusing solely on those fixtures that have been announced. So I've brought up 5 players here who I think are really interesting options, a few differentials, a few obvious picks like Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm going to quickly touch on them, some of their projected points and etc. And what I'm going to do afterwards, this we're going to stick around, I'm going to quickly look at some players who are projected to score points in a single game week for 22, just to show you why it's quite an interesting debate and why you might want to still hold those single game week players. So first and foremost, Maddison here, and it's worth mentioning, I've got obviously a mix of midfielders, forwards, defenders, and some of the stats down here. So obviously it's going to cater towards the likes of Ronaldo's and Chris Woods rather than Cucurella at Brighton. But it's just here for obviously you guys to check out some of the underlying stats. But we have Maddison right now as an option for Leicester. The reason I do like Leicester as an option in double game week is because of the game time that Maddison should get if he is confirmed fit. Now, as I mentioned, we have until next Friday until the deadline. I would like to think that Maddison is going to be available, and if he isn't, some clarity in the press conferences whether he is or not. And at 6.9 million, I believe that he's a brilliant option to consider going into these Leicester fixtures. Again, rewind the video to the double fixtures that I had up earlier to check him out in a bit more detail. But in regards to Maddison, he is currently projected to score 9.7 points in game week 22. The 26.5 that you can see on screen there is over the next 5 game weeks, but he's projected to score 9.7 against Burnley and Spurs, which puts him as one of the best midfielders to own in isolation in this game week. I believe he's actually top for midfielders in projected points. And you can see there with his game so far, 82 FPL points with 5 goals so far, and a lot of that has come in recent game weeks. He had a really poor start to the season, but he's really picked up over the last few game weeks. So someone that I really think managers should be considering in their sides. Now, long-term, Leicester's fixtures are a little bit more tricky. You come into a few tricky big games for them, but in isolation, I really think game week 22 is a great fixture for Maddison. Now, Chris Wood at Burnley, someone who's enjoyed, well, not enjoyed really, a bit of a barren spell for him during this season so far. I've only 3 goals and 46 points. Usually the talisman in this Burnley side, and probably been upstaged by the new signing in Cornet, who's now gone to the AFCON, obviously Cup of Nations. So that means that all the pressure is going to be on Wood's shoulders. And going into this double game week, I do believe that there is a great opportunity for a nice differential punt. In particular, if you're on a free hit, and if you're not, maybe if you want to go a bit differential, I can understand why managers might be a little bit put off by him based on Burnley of recent, and their fixtures aren't necessarily the greatest. And 8.1 projected points in game week 22. He is 3rd best for forwards this game week. So definitely putting his head out there as one of the best options in the forward department. And at 6.7 million, a real great opportunity for managers to go sideways if they are really not liking the likes of Antonio in his single game week. Or even if you want to come down from one of your premium strikers again, if you're not interested in the available fixtures. With Chris Wood at 8.1 projected points, I think he could pose a really nice differential for you managers to consider. Now, Dennis at Watford is somebody that a lot of managers own right now. I think it is confirmed that he isn't going AFCON, but it's worth keeping an eye out just for any information that comes out maybe over the coming days. But I believe he isn't going to be going to AFCON, which makes those owners who held him happy days. Now, the big debate's been whether to own Dennis or King, and I think the real thing going for King was, of course, because of penalties and Dennis going to AFCON. With that confirmed that he isn't going, we think Dennis projected to score 7.1 points in game week 22. King, on the other hand, 6.8 points. So really, if you're in a situation where you own Dennis and you don't own King, there's very little in it. So for those King owners right now, I wouldn't be sweating too much. King's only projected to score 0.03 more points over their double game week. And it's worth mentioning, Dennis is fourth best for forwards in game week 22 in isolation. 21.2 points projected over the next 5 game weeks. I know it's a bit of a mouthful there. Now, the reason I've thrown in Cucurella as an alternative for you guys in the Brighton defence is mainly because of his underlying stats recently. Now, of course, with the stats that I have on screen for you here, they aren't doing him much justice. Obviously, 0 goals, 1 FPL assist, 8 shots, but 13 FPL bonus points is really interesting to see. And somebody who's been getting guaranteed game time. Brighton, yes, defensively, they have been struggling with their injuries to the likes of Dunk, Burns, etc. But at 7.1 projected points in game week 22 alone, he is actually third best for defenders, only being beaten by the Chelsea boys Alonso and Azpilicueta. So in regards to a defender at 5.1 million, yes, he is probably a little bit pricier than managers would expect. He's looking like a really nice differential into that Brighton defence. And if you don't own somebody like Sanchez in goal, and you're maybe looking to get a bit of ownership in that Brighton defence, I would say that he is a really nice alternative. Yes, Tariq Lamptey offers a bit of a cheaper option available, I believe about 0.5 million cheaper, but with the recent injuries that he's had, if you're a little bit cautious about that option, I think Cucurella is a really nice alternative at 7.1 points projected. Now, last up, there's no surprises here. Ronaldo is in this conversation. With the double game week that they have against Villa and Brentford away, I've touched on it. I'm not as big of a fan of those fixtures as a lot of managers would be, but the algorithm has him down to score the most points in this double game week 22 at 12.1 points, which is more than second place Maddison at 9.7. So Ronaldo, the clear standout option for double game week 22. I think a lot of managers are probably thinking double game week, is Ronaldo's minutes at risk? With a Saturday fixture followed by a Wednesday fixture, I would say that's probably a big enough gap for the worries to be dispelled over Ronaldo's game time. I think the only thing that's going to hinder him is potentially Ralph having a bit of pressure as manager now and looking for alternatives for Manchester United to pick up results. But if you are a Ronaldo owner, this is not the time to sell unless information comes out about problems in the Man United change room. Ronaldo is at the heart of it. I still think he is the absolute go-to forward in the coming game weeks. And you can see that with the projected points over the next 5 game weeks at 38.3. He is the absolute standout FPL asset in the premium department. 12.1 of those points projected in game week 22. So you can see long-term, he is looking like an excellent option. So guys, as I mentioned, these are some of the standout options I would be considering if you're looking at a free hit or potentially just bringing in free transfers for game week 22 in isolation. I know I'm dragging this video on a little bit, but I just want to quickly show you guys a few single game week players who, if you own, I would still consider holding. So let's have a look at those in a minute. Okay guys, so last up, as I mentioned, I'm just chucking in there a few single game week players that I do think is worth touching on. Now, as I mentioned, if you're looking to play your free hit in game week 22, which is of course now a double, it's very, very difficult for me to sit here and say to you guys that you shouldn't be bringing in double game weeks. I believe that probably all of your 11 starting players should likely be double game week players. But for those managers right now that are maybe looking outside of a free hit team, just using free transfers or small points hits, I really would urge you managers just to double check these projected points for players who particularly have great fixtures in game week 22, and that's going to be West Ham and Liverpool. Now, I know Newcastle have a very, very good fixture as well, but with the injuries to like a Saint Maximin and Wilson, if they aren't recovered by that stage, I don't really think they're necessarily in contention any other Newcastle assets. So I've kind of put them aside for now. But if you are a Wilson or Saint Maximin owner, and they are confirmed fit, they could come into the equation as well as potential holds for the game week 22. But in particular, the pair of Antonio Bowen and then the Liverpool pair of Jota and Alexander-Arnold, 4 players that are highly owned in the game right now. And I know that they are players that managers are questioning whether to potentially use as cash cows to go into double game week players or hold in game week 22. So I just want to give you some projected points. We know the stats a little bit, but I've got them on screen just in case if you guys want to check them out. But we all know these guys are doing very well so far this season. So looking at Antonio right now, you can see over the next 5 game weeks, 26.6 projected points. Now, that isn't necessarily as high as some other forwards, but that is taking into account his single game week in 22. So when we remove game week 22 and we look at it from game week 23 for the next 5 fixtures, he climbs the projected points then and kind of comes back to where you expect him in the top 5 forwards of projected points. But with 5.5 projected points in game week 22, remember he's got a single at Leeds at home. It's worth mentioning that I don't think those are projected points that we just want to sell him straight away. Yes, the likes of King, Dennis, Lukaku, etc., Chris Wood have higher projected points in game week 22 because they have doubles. But I think when we kind of look longer term, I think you'll probably just want to go back to Antonio as a forward option. So again, if you're free hitting, Antonio's projected points probably don't hint at you necessarily bringing him in over the likes of Chris Wood. But if you're looking at selling Antonio, I really would urge you managers just to consider again, because his projected points are still very solid at 5.5. And I think longer term, his projected points are very consistent and we could see really good returns from him. Now, Bowen is another very interesting asset. Projected to score 5.2 points, which again is a lot less than some of the players we discussed. Even the likes of Nemanja Matic have more projected points than him naturally because 2 starts equals 4 points and throwing a clean sheet and he's matched Bowen's projected points. I get that side of things. But again, if we're looking outside of a free hit team, 24.3 projected points, and again that's taking into account the single in 22. I really do think that he's still a brilliant option for managers to consider, and with those projected points at home to Leeds, I really think that you shouldn't be necessarily scrambling to sell someone like Bowen. I think he's just happily sit in your team, and you can look around at other double game week players selling those singles. I think these 2 can stay in your team. Now, talking about staying in your team, Jota and Alexander-Arnold are 2 players that I just cannot urge you guys enough not to sell in your teams. Jota right now is projected to score 8 points in game week 22. And remember, he has a single at home to Brentford. Now, with Salah and Mane absent from the team, it's going to be interesting to see if this hinders or benefits Jota from a creative perspective and goal scoring form. But right now, with that home fixture against Brentford, with 8 projected points, that's only slightly less than the likes of Son at 8.4. And it's more than Barnes on 7.6 and Mason Mount on 7.4. And all of those players having a double game week in 22. So guys, at his price point right now, you do not sell Jota. You accept that he has a single game week and you roll with him. And even if you are on a free hit, I probably can't convince you to put Jota in your team, but I really do think there is a conversation for it with 8 projected points. And last up, Alexander-Arnold. Again, somebody that I just cannot see anybody selling. At his price point in particular, looking to buy him back is going to be difficult. But with his projected points of 6.9 points, that is 4th best for defenders in game week 22. Only Cucurella, Azpilicueta and Alonso, who's at 8.1 projected points, beat him in this double game week 22. So again, someone like Alexander-Arnold, although he might have a single in your team, can happily just sit there and go home to Brentford and pick up some points. I still think there's brilliant returns for the Liverpool pair and West Ham pair. So it's interesting, guys. Let me know in the comments if you're in a situation where you're not free hitting. Do these guys stay in your team? And if you are free hitting, could you even throw a few sneaky single game weekers in? Let me know. Right guys, that's going to wrap up today's Fantasy Football Fix price change predictions video. Again, this has been all about double game weeks and it's very, very early on reaction. So obviously with the Friday deadline next week, we have over a week to wait until that game week 22 deadline, with game week 21 still continues. So we're going to be dropping plenty of videos between now and then discussing game week 22. So don't worry about it. This is just the tip of the iceberg in regards to the discussions on this double game week. So as always guys, if you want to support the channel, make sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And as always, all the information taken from fantasyfootballfix.com, the leading FPL platform. So make sure you upload those squads for free to access all of the free tools available. Check out our price predictor, brilliant free tools that help you improve your FPL game. So guys, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Cheers.